easy short intro KB here, bringing you 5 tricks or rotations you can use to increase your damage in raids. Well, Izzy swaps pretty much had to be the first thing on the list. It's just so simple and it's so powerful. It's still one of the best ways to deal damage in the game, and for good reason, so this is definitely one everybody should know how to do. The first thing you need is obviously Izanagi's Burden, Catalyst preferred. As for the other part, for the rocket, you'll need a rocket launcher with either Reconstruction or with auto-loading holster. So once you've got your launcher and your sniper ready to go, you'll want to load up a honed edge shot, grab your rally flag, pick up all your ammo. Then you'll go into your damage, and it does depend a little bit how you start based on the perks of your launcher. For example, I have bait and switch on my rocket launcher, so I want to actually tag my target with both my other weapons before shooting the launcher. But when it comes to anything that doesn't have bait and switch, I just shoot the launcher first. So with that, we'll just shoot our energy, Izanagi, reload, rocket twice if you have recon, back to Izzy, shoot it, reload, launcher, Izzy, reload, launcher. Oh, that was too quick. Izzy, reload, launcher, Izzy, reload, launcher, Izzy, reload, launcher. Now, you'll notice I actually made a mistake there, and I basically pulled out the launcher before it was reloaded. That is actually kind of a good thing. That means that you can go even faster and add a third weapon into this to do even more damage. Now for that third weapon in the energy slot, I recommend you have it match the element of your rocket launcher, and I recommend it be either a slug shotgun or a rapid fire frame sniper. Now for doing this, I recommend you also use dexterity mods on your gauntlets so that you can really just move your weapons around quickly. Once you're adding in a third weapon, the Izzy swaps start to get a little bit tighter. And when you can see with the dexterity mods, we move our weapons quite a bit quicker. But now we'll go ahead and do the same thing. Izzy, slug, rocket, shoot my other rocket recon, Izzy, reload, slug, rocket, Izzy, reload, slug, rocket, Izzy, reload, slug, rocket. You can see you can just keep that going. Now, something you may have noticed is the slug not doing very much damage from me compared to the Izzy. But if we pop down a rift, you can see we pretty much get the full damage of the slug now. Almost the same as the Izzy. That is because of the Lunafaction boots. If you're going to be using slugs in almost any damage setup, you're going to need your person who's dropping the well to have Lunafaction boots on. And now we have something I think is quite a bit simpler, but is also Warlock exclusive. But I think it's an absolutely great choice for any of my Warlocks out there who still want to do good damage without having a damage super. So this isn't so much a rotation as it is a supplement to other rotations, or just a way of spamming out rockets really quickly, completely on its own without any complex setups. So the first thing we should do is have a look at Rain of Fire's exotic perk. You can see straight off the bat, air dodge reloads all your weapons. That right there, that's all that matters. The rest of it's pretty cool for its neutral game, dealing more damage if you're using fusion rifles. It's great stuff, but the main thing we're looking at here, air dodge reloads all your weapons. So every time you do a little Icarus dash, all 3 of your weapons get reloaded. See? And look at that, the additional's been reloaded. And to take it a step further, we can even eat our grenade to have 2 dodges before we have our cooldown. So now we can shoot 4 rockets really quickly. So there are actually a lot of ways you could use this exotic, and it doesn't even have to be only with launchers. It's actually a great way to use weapons that don't have their own auto-loading perks as parts of a cycle. Things like Deliverance, which I mean cornered and bait and switch, that is a ton of DPS. You get a huge damage boost and a really big charge time boost. But it doesn't reload on its own, so once you dump its mag, you have to reload it manually normally, and that takes a lot of time off of damage. But with Rain of Fire, you'll be able to keep it reloaded while you're shooting your rockets. But going back to Rain of Fire, pretty much the most simple setup you can use is just using Apex with the Reconstruction to have 2 in the mag, eat your grenade, set up your bait and switch, shoot both launchers, dodge, shoot, dodge, and then you can even just manual reload. You get 2 in the mag back pretty quickly, and just do it again. And that's a really quick way to just drop 8 rockets. Now, what if you wanted to kick out that manual reload? This is mainly going to be for something that has a longer damage phase, where you still have time to shoot all the rockets without needing to manually reload some, so that you get more damage in from your specials, which is actually a lot of situations, so we'll look at that. And one of the things I actually like is, since it reloads weapons in your backpack, you could put the Apex away, and then while the cooldown is happening, shoot your slug, and then once it's cooled down, you could dodge, it would reload your Apex up to 1, and then Reconstruction would kick in a second later, and bump you up to 2 when you pull it back out. And that looks something like this. And you'd want to mix in shooting your kinetic some to reproc bait and switch whenever you needed it there. So Rain of Fire, very powerful, a lot of options, definitely recommend it. Up next, we've got a Hunter exclusive, and arguably the most powerful in the game, and that is the Radiant Dance Machines. So the first thing we can actually look at is the exotic perk, because it was recently reworked this season to be insane. When you use your dodge while you're near an enemy, you'll get a bunch of dodges. You can just spam them, it instantly regens for a timer, and that timer can be extended by killing things. So what you do is you dodge, you kill a thing, and then you have 10 seconds of infinite dodges, and you can just dump all your rockets in that time. And it is able to jump more than 10 rockets in one bait and switch timer. It's pretty much the most efficient way to use rockets right now. As for actually using it, it's really simple. You really do just dodge and hold click and mash your dodge key and you win. That's it. You do damage. You crazy damage. It's absurd. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, next thing we're on to is Strand, mainly on Warlock, but technically most of this applies to all 3 classes if you really wanted to. I'd only suggest it on Warlock though. So the first thing we want to take a look at is the subclass. We have 3 fragments we really need, and the aspects don't really matter. While using Weaver's Call can sometimes help a little bit, really, these should be more focused on your neutral game, what you're going to do for ad clear and such. It all depends on what you're going to do. As for our grenade, we use Threadling grenades for damage, just because they are the highest damage grenade for a Strand, but they really don't have that much of an impact, and if you're doing something hard like a Master Raid, you're totally fine to just use Shackle grenades. They also cause a little bit of extra stagger, which is always nice. Now, another big important part of this is actually the melee, and this only applies to Warlock. This is pretty much the only Warlock exclusive part of this, the melee. So this melee applies Unravel, and Unravel is pretty unique. It applies a debuff to the enemy, and essentially as they are damaged, they take extra damage from the Unravel. It's sort of like Jolt, except Unravel does not wear off as long as you keep damaging them. It will stay on forever. So you apply Unravel at the start, and you'll have that damage over time adding onto your damage the entire time throughout the damage phase. So the longer the damage phase, the more important Unravel is, the more it'll do. The next big part, this is what really makes Strand shine, is actually these 3 fragments. Thread of Generation, this is a huge one. This is giving you grenade energy as you deal damage. And then the other huge one is Thread of Ascent. This fragment gives you so many bonuses, and it reloads your weapon. It is absolutely insane, and I recommend it on pretty much any Strand build. Then we use Thread of Evolution here, just for a little bit of extra damage from our Threadlings, why not? This is mainly going to be for the Warlock, which again is the best class for doing this, just because the super is Threadlings, so it's a little bit more. And then also any other Threadlings you throw, like your grenade, a little extra damage, always nice. But the big 2, Thread of Ascent, Thread of Generation. So, Thread of Ascent, throwing your grenade, reloads your weapon. So, every single weapon that you have while this is equipped now has Demolitionist as a 3rd perk. And I do want to cover this. The way that this perk works is, unlike Starfire, which was based on the amount of ticks you dealt, like how often you dealt damage, this is based on the number of damage you deal. So hitting a rocket gives you a big chunk of grenade back, and something like Wither Horde doesn't actually give you all that much back, but it is constant and it's still nice to have, and I actually do recommend being the Wither Horde if you can for this setup. So now that we've looked at the subclass and we've seen how it works, let's talk about what you need to actually do, because I think it's one of the harder to execute rotations right now. Now, at the Enclave, our damage doesn't count as damage towards Thread of Generation, so this is going to be copped together a little bit, and I'll show off some extra clips of me actually doing it, and you can just watch the grenade energy while it's happening, and you'll sort of see how it works. Now, because of the nature of this rotation, it is not an exact order that you do everything in, because the amount of grenade energy you get back varies a little bit, and it kind of depends on some things like how well you're doing the Wither Horde, whether you're the one unraveling, or if somebody else gets to unravel, things like that. And so how often you get your grenade back is going to change a little bit, and because of that, it's going to change how you do the cycle a little bit. So I'm going to just talk about some things you should keep in mind while you're doing it. So the first thing you want to do going in is just toss a melee if you can. It will apply the unravel, and then after that, all the damage you deal or your teammates deal is going to keep that unravel going. You definitely want to apply it early if you can. Next up, you're going to want to proc your bait and switch, so we'll toss our Wither Horde, shoot our slug, and then we'll toss our rockets, throw our grenade, shoot an extra rocket, put it away. I like to reapply Wither Horde, shoot special for a little bit, maybe toss another melee, let my rockets come back, shoot those rockets, and you would have had another grenade by now. Throw a grenade, shoot another rocket. And you can also remember Thread of Ascent gives you very fast reload speed, so if you're getting near the end of a damage phase or it's a shorter damage phase, it might be worth it to do a reload or two. So like I said, it kind of changes depending on the situation, but that's the idea. You are just throwing your grenade to reload your rocket as much as you can, and using your special while your rocket's reloading in your backpack. And we are on to our last thing, and this is sort of a blanket term for using support or not using your heavy weapon in damage. Generally, rockets are going to be the best damage for yourself, but things like Tractor and Gallowhorn are very good for teams, and being able to maximize your damage while you're running those is still a great skill to have. And it's a really funny flex when you do more damage than your friends while you're using Tractor Cannon. So the way that you do these are pretty specific to every boss, so I'm just going to cover some of the weapons, but the essential setup is going to be using either Tractor Cannon or Galley, depending on which boss you're doing and which weapons are needed for the team. And then you're going to have a powerhouse special weapon. And if it's a longer damage phase, even 2 in case you run out of ammo. So what we're going to do now is go ahead and look at some of the powerhouse special weapons we can use with these support heavy weapons and see how to use them effectively. And the first thing we're going to show off is a slug shotgun. This probably doesn't surprise any of you if you've been here since Beyond Light, where they used to be the absolute meta. They're still absolutely amazing, but rockets have kind of come to overshadow them, which makes sense. It uses a more expensive ammo type. But slugs as a special weapon supplement are still absolutely insane. You can do double slug, you can do single slug, no matter what, it's good. Now, while we're on the topic of slugs and double slugs, I'm going to go ahead and show off how to do double slugs, just in case you're interested, but you'll still do plenty of damage just using one if you do have this set up. Doing a slug setup is very simple actually. You just hold down your fire button and your aim button. After it shoots, you switch weapons. Each time, just go back and forth. And remember, you gotta keep your tractor applied every 10 seconds. Or if you're doing Gallahorn, you gotta shoot your Gallahorn every 10 seconds too. Gallahorn actually does okay damage, so I would recommend still using most of the shots in a damage phase. And only saving some if you think you'll need them for the next damage phase and you won't be getting the ammo back. But otherwise, it's really simple. You basically just apply your buff or your debuff to your teammates and you start double slugging. And don't forget to have lunafaction boots if you're using slugs, otherwise you probably won't have the range for what you're trying to do. Alright, next up we're going to check out the latest Supremacy sniper from Last Wish. This one is pretty much the most powerful sniper in the game for DPS, I'd say, not counting heavies. And this is because it has bait and switch. Remember, this is a 35% buff, which is pretty much the highest weapon buff in the game you can get, other than Surrounded, which is kind of hard to proc. Now, a lot of people might opt for 4th times the charm in this tree, and while that will let you shoot for a very long time, pretty much just the duration of any damage phase, I think that cutting out one reload is not worth the amount of damage you get per shot from bait and switch. Next up, we're going to look at a fusion rifle, the Techian Force, also from Last Wish. It has a lot of good weapons in it. We've got the new Controlled Burst perk, which is just absolutely fantastic. It's 20% damage for landing a burst, and then also you get, I think, 10% charge rate. It's a little bit, but I mean, more is better, obviously. And 20% more damage just for landing a burst. That's insane for something like Tractor or Gallahorn, where you're kind of using your special weapon a lot. And while I don't think it's great in a bait and switch cycle, because generally you're only shooting the fusion one at a time or two at a time, I do think it's absolutely great as a powerhouse weapon paired with Tractor or Gallahorn. And then you can get either Reconstruction or Rewind rounds in the other perk tree, makes it so you just don't have to reload. All around amazing fusion rifle. And if we want to get something in the kinetic slot, this is something a little less well known. The Deliverance can roll with bait and switch and cornered. Now, cornered isn't always going to be active, but when it is, you're getting 37% increased charge time with no damage loss, and bait and switch is 35% damage. So if you're able to fill both conditions, you get an insane amount of DPS out of this thing. And cornered only needs 2 enemies, and they can be pretty far. It's much more forgiving than Surrounded is. So another top-notch option as a special weapon focused DPS setup for something like Tractor or Gallahorn, where you can use your heavy ammo to proc bait and switch. Where I wouldn't recommend this if you're trying to dump rockets, because then you're going to run out of ammo and not be able to use bait and switch on this anymore. And this one's a bit of an odd one, because normally you'd use special weapon DPS when you're running Tractor or Galley, and those take up your exotic slot, which means you wouldn't be able to run this. But if you're in any weird cases, maybe you're doing the challenge for War Priest and you need an eager edge sword, or you're just not using a rocket launcher for some reason and you want to have more damage, or it's a really long damage phase and you are using a launcher and you're running out of ammo early, I definitely recommend using Merciless. It is actually a huge powerhouse from special ammo. You can get insane amounts of damage, and it's just got a great combination of perks to make it happen. So first of all, we've got Impetus, and this is a 50% damage boost whenever you kill an enemy and reload. So you kill the enemy, you reload, and then you go start just mag dumping into the boss. And that mag dump just goes insane because the conserve momentum perk just makes it start instant firing after the first 3 or 4 shots. It's absolutely crazy. It's a blast to use. I do recommend it. But I do have to say again, you need a pretty long damage phase to get any use out of this thing. And if you made it this far into the video, thank you so much for watching the whole thing. I know that was a bit of a long one. That said, if you learned something and you'd like to learn some more, leave a comment, let me know what it is, and make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching.